Here's the 2024 Castle Pines real estate forecast. I'll start and give you a quick summary of the key points here, and then I'll break each point down in more detail with supporting data. So here's 4 key things to know about the 2024 real estate market in the city of Castle Pines. The first is that we expect home prices to increase 1 to 2% during 2024. The second key point is we expect the number of homes sold will increase by 10 to 20% over the historically low levels of home sales we saw in 2023. The third key point is that we expect inventory to rise slightly, creating more homes for sale, but it will still be below what we consider a balanced market in Castle Pines, which will still leave buyers frustrated with limited inventory to look at. Now, of these 3 key points, there's one key assumption, and I'll start out with that. And the key assumption is that we expect interest rates to slowly drop down. So by the end of 2024, we expect a 30-year mortgage to be around 6%. So I want to start out first with that key assumption around interest rates, because the interest rates are going to be what drives the market in 2024 in Castle Pines, as well as Metro Denver and the rest of the U.S. So let's look here at the forecast from some major players of what interest rates will be by the end of 2024. This chart here shows the breakdown from several different large industry players, showing interest rates are running from a low point of 5.75% for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage from Bankrate to Realtor.com predicting 6.5% at the end of this year. If you look at these, the average of these is roughly around 6% to 6.25%. So as we look at these assumptions, this is the key thing and is very important. One other key point I want to make about interest rates, though, is that if you look at this chart here, that the 30-year mortgage rate since 1971 is what this chart shows, that rarely has it dipped below 5%. So again, we have lots of people, and we'll talk about this more a little bit later, that have 30-year mortgages locked in at 3.25%, 3.5%, 4%, and those are great rates by historical standards. If you look at this chart, the dashed red line is showing you interest rates at 5%. And if you look since 1971, it wasn't until the Great Recession of 2008, 2009 that you saw mortgage rate, 30-year mortgage rates drop below 5%. Before that, 6% was a good rate, with the average being around 8%. We've been spoiled with these low interest rates of 3, 4, even 5% by historical standards is an amazing rate. So as you see, over the last year, rates have bumped up substantially over that 5% line. And again, hit as high as 7.75%. So people are just not wanting to buy a home with such high interest rates, and high being in quotes, because again, by historical standards, a 7% rate is not a bad rate. So just keep in mind as we look at this that, again, a rate of 6%, if we get there by the end of the year, will be a good rate by historical standards. This next chart here is an interesting one. This was a survey of home buyers from Bright MLS, which again is one of the largest metro list systems in the country where home properties are listed. And they found that 72.1% of buyers say they're pausing their buying decision because of high interest rates. 34% because of low inventory, and then 17% was only because of home prices. So if we had more inventory, we'd get more buyers. And if we had lower interest rates, more buyers would enter the market. So remember those key facts, because that's going to be important as we move through the rest of this forecast and talk about it. Well, let's look at some national data here to say nationally what some of the economists and forecasters predict home prices will do in the U.S. in 2023. And that's what this chart here shows. And it shows that the Mortgage Bankers Association is forecasting a 4.1% annual price appreciation, Fannie Mae 2.8%, Freddie Mac 2.7%, HPES, which is a survey of 100 top economists and industry experts, they're forecasting a 2.2%. Goldman Sachs a 1.9%, NAR a 0.7%, Zillow basically flat, and Realtor.com slightly down. And so this is again a national forecast of home prices. And again, real estate is local, but the macroeconomic conditions that are being factored into this pricing and these price forecasts, typically we look and say, okay, this is at a national level, what's going on in our local market? And we'll talk about that here a little bit with Metro Denver and with Castle Pines. but the macroeconomic factors are also applying to Metro Denver and Castle Pines. And there's nothing unique in our market here in Metro Denver or Castle Pines that would make us perform differently than the rest of the country as we see it now. So overall, if you look at these home price forecasts, the average is 1.5% appreciation. And again, if we're talking about Castle Pines and Metro Denver, again, we think that's a fair assumption for Metro Denver for 2024, that home prices will move up 1 to 2%. Again, assuming interest rates come down just a little bit by the end of 2024. On another positive note, if you look at HPS, which is again the top or 100 top economic and industry experts in their price appreciation forecast for the next 5 years, they're bullish on residential real estate right now. And they see home prices continuing to rise over the next 5 years, and that's what's in this next chart, with home prices appreciating more and more over the next several years. And behind that is one, interest rates supposedly going to come down, and two, buyer demand that's been pent up because of this rise in interest rates. They anticipate the pent-up buyer demand breaking loose finally, as well as the millennials continue to move into their home buying years. And with that large influx of buyers coming into the market, they expect it to be a bullish market over the next 5 years. So key point number 2 is how many homes are going to sell in Castle Pines in 2024. We do expect home sales to increase, the number of homes sold. If you look, and I'm going to look at the original communities here because their data goes back in time quite a ways, you'll see on this chart here that we see the blue is the rolling 12-month average of home sales, or the prior 12-month of home sales. And so roughly in Castle Pines, we were selling around 200 homes a month going all the way back, or 200 homes a year going back to 2013 until COVID hit. And then we just saw that start to fall substantially to where in 2023, we only had 128 homes sale in the original communities. Now for 2024, we expect that to increase, 10 to 20%. And again, this ties in with national numbers. We expect as interest rates fall a little bit, more buyers will come into the market, and we will see a little bit of uptick in home sales from that incredibly low level of only 128 homes. So right now, I'm expecting in the city of Castle Pines and the original communities, probably between 145 to 160 homes to sell in 2024. This takes us into key point number 3, which is that we expect inventory to move up slightly in the city of Castle Pines, but it still won't be at what we consider a balanced market. If you look here at this chart, this shows our inventory levels in the city of Castle Pines going back all the way to 2009 in the original communities. And if you look, you'll see that obviously coming out of the Great Recession, we had high inventory levels that dropped, and then we hit kind of a baseline amount in 2014 that held steady pretty much through COVID in 2020, where we saw roughly, on average per month, 40 active listings for sale each month. And then as COVID hit, then that fell way down to only 10 homes, and then it's popped back up to 20 homes on average per month based upon interest rates moving up. But still, again, if you look at this, it's historically low. The red dashed line is what I would consider our baseline amount, that once we get back up to there, we'll be back to more normal market in Castle Pines, so we're still at only half that. And I would expect by the end of the year that our inventory levels, they might get close to this baseline again, but not quite to it. And we'll see how that ties into interest rates and how interest rates move, as well as if we can get people to list the home. And that's really the key component here, is that we're seeing inventory levels stay low despite low buyer demand because we don't have many new listings coming on the market. And that's what I'm going to talk about here on why inventory is low. And if you look at this chart here, this tells us that right now that 78.7% of mortgage rates that current homeowners have is less than 5%. 22% are below 3%, 37% are between 3 and 4%, 19% are between 4 and 5%, 10% are between 5 and 6, and 11% are above 6%. So we have what's called a lock-in effect. You'll start to see this in the news now. You'll start to hear people talk about it. And the lock-in effect is that current homeowners are not wanting to leave these incredibly low interest rates. They look at going out and buying a different home, be it a new home or a resale home. They look at the price, they do the calculations on their mortgage at 7% or 6.5% interest rate, and the payments are substantially larger than what they're in now. So current homeowners are making the decision to stay put. And that's why despite low home sales, we're continuing to see inventory stay low because we're not getting new listings on the market. Now, the interesting thing about this is, when will current homeowners decide, hey, it's time to sell? When do we feel that we can put our home on the market and find a home for a reasonable price? And this next chart here talks about this with this lock-in rate. And this was a survey done by the Financing Housing Federal Authority, the Federal Housing and Financing Authority, FHFA. And they found that people with an interest rate below 3% just don't have any plans to sell. 3 to 4% probably not selling. 4 to 5, they might, but they really have to think about it. 5 to 6%, they're okay selling and moving into something because rates aren't substantially higher than, of course, people above 6% and a current 6% or higher rate. They have no problem selling. They're not feeling that locked-in effect. So if you look at this, this really limits the number of people that are willing to put their home on the market. And what we're seeing is that really the people that are selling now, it's a forced move, meaning something significant's happened in their life. They've had a life change, such as divorce, a death, or a job transfer that's forcing them to sell, versus the casual seller that's just saying, hey, I want a different house, I want a bigger house, I want to move into something a little bit better. You're not seeing that type of move in this type of market right now because of these high interest rates. And if you look, this chart here breaks down the new listings, so the new listings the prior 12 months. And again, you can see the Castle Pines is the blue line, Metro Denver is the orange line. And if you look between basically 2013 and 2021, the inventory levels or the new listings hitting the market stayed pretty consistent. And then it just started to fall off a cliff as we reached into 2022. As interest rates started to move up, home sellers just decided to stay put. And so you can see that it fell off that cliff there, and that matches kind of the same slowdown that we've seen in sales is matched up with the slowdown in new listings. And so you take that component together with fewer homes coming on the market, with fewer buyers, inventory is not going up because those components are still staying in balance. And again, this is a major underlying linchpin of the forecast for 2024 is that we're assuming that interest rates will come down a little, but not a lot. And because of that, we're not going to see a big change in inventory because current homeowners are just not willing to move. So we're going to see inventory stay constrained. Constrained inventory means that home prices will be supported in 2024. Now, what could change all of this? Well, of course, interest rates could. If we see a big drop in interest rates in 2024, below 6%, we'll probably see a run on the market where we'll have buyers flood into the market. We'll see homes get gobbled up and we'll see prices increase substantially. The flip side is also probably true, though, that if we see interest rates move up, say, to 8% or 8.5% because of whatever news, inflation can't get tamed, and so the Fed decides to raise rates versus lower rates, then we're probably going to see home sales come to a screeching halt, and we will see some homeowners putting their home on the market, and so we'll see an imbalance start to occur in the market where we have no buyers with still some sellers, and we might start to see prices drop. But again, it doesn't seem like there's a case for interest rates to fall substantially in 2024, and it doesn't seem like there's a case for it to rise substantially in 2024. But interest rates truly are going to be the driver of the market in 2024. And if interest rates fall to that level close to 6%, again, we should see home prices rise slightly in Castle Pines, 1 to 2%. We should see home sales increase 10 to 20% as more people come into the market to sell. And we should see inventory rise slightly, but not substantially to affect pricing. If you have more questions about what's going on in the market in Castle Pines, feel free to call me at 303-886-3437. Thanks and have a great day.